the PHP. That's patreon.com/the PHP. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Before we get to our interview with Senator Brian King, yesterday was a terrible tragedy in Texas, and there was some coverage about this, obviously all over the media, all over the news. And believe it or not, a lot of people are looking to Arkansas to remedy when it comes to being able to arm yourself in churches. So on Fox News and their coverage, several times throughout the day, they mentioned Senator Brian King. This is what it sounded like.
Absolutely. And earlier this evening, we had talked to Arkansas State Senator Brian King because he had introduced legislation in that state called the Church Protection Act. The Church Protection Act allows churches to permit someone to carry a firearm in the church, someone that the church officiates as the official, in order to protect the church in this type of case, if indeed that is needed. And clearly with the allegations from police that it was a bystander from across the street when this guy got out of his car. When
so
Kelly
joining us now, we have Senator Brian King on the line. Brian, good to talk to you, sir.
Hey, good to be on, Paul, but to talk about the bill, but we certainly hope it was under better circumstances, and certainly our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone affected by this evil tragedy.
I know, it's awful. I mean, the guy's a complete monster, and you know, it's I will say, you know, you hate to even get into the political gun debate at all, but it's just refreshing to hear common sense even from the White House. You know, even just to hear Donald Trump say, you know, it's a good thing there was somebody else there with a gun, or the death toll. I think it's without question the death toll would have been much, much higher.
Yeah, and one thing that the 2013 Church Protection Act was designed for was rural situations. I mean, in many counties, on Sunday, you may only have one or two deputies on call, and they may be covering 700 square miles. And this would allow, each church to designate who they wanted to carry. And it's just in those type of situations, the response time can be considerable in rural situations. I mean, it'd be bad enough if it was in a major city. And so this, like I said, no one wants to even think about these things. It's even terrible to even think that we've got to do this type of thing. But because of maybe even religious intolerance reason, or, maybe certain denominations, you have extremes on the right, left, that may not like a certain denomination or congregation. You have pastors that and churches that may be involved in a situation involving deep family issues that can cause controversy. And we also have the crime issue, which, is another failure by Jeremy Hutchison, the whole Hutchison clan, that has, let our crime situation get out of control, and all they want to do is this big talk, but things keep getting worse and worse. But you have crime situations involving churches, and so the 2013 bill basically was just to allow each church to be able to decide how they want to handle what I don't even think is a gun issue. I think of it as a security issue. Mm-hmm. And so they could either not allow any carry at all, or they could designate certain people, or they could allow anybody with a concealed permit to be able to carry.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It is a security issue. It's also something that, in my opinion, it has to do with these churches having freedom to be whatever church they want to be. If you want to post a sign out there that says no guns allowed, I mean, you can do that. I don't think many churches would, because I think common sense would say we're kind of inviting an attack here. Now, talk a little bit about, I mean, since this tragedy has happened, though, people are looking to your bill and Arkansas's efforts here, right? I mean that's why you were mentioned on Fox News so much yesterday.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of states, even what you would think is pro-carry states, were not allowing carry in churches, and we tried several times in Arkansas to do it, and we were finally able to get it passed. One thing I will tell you about the sign issue. Now, one thing that several states did.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Good day, everyone. This is State Representative Dan Sullivan. I'm here on the Paul Harrell radio program, which is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. I appreciate everybody being here today and look forward to visiting with you. Paul's on vacation for a few weeks, and I know he's going to need that as he gets ready to go down to what he calls the Ivory Palace down in Little Rock for the upcoming fiscal session. I just love this time of year and hope you've had a great holiday. My kids were all home and family was there, and we had a great time together. I also hope you had a chance to go catch the 71st Northeast Arkansas basketball tournament. We had a fantastic final with 5 of the 8 teams from my district, District 53. We had the Bay Yellow Jackets against the Riverside Girls, and it was an exciting game with a Riverside hitting a free throw with 0.6 seconds left, followed by a length of the court pass, and the Bay Yellow Jackets laid it in for the win. The Nettleton Girls won, I think, their 3rd consecutive NEA tournament title. The boys from Nettleton won also. Tough loss to the Brooklyn boys. I know they played a great game and really appreciate the way the hard work they had and how they played. You know, the NEA is the grandfather of all holiday tournaments in Arkansas. I was there, I think, just about every day, and the stands were packed. People were excited. Got a chance to visit with a lot of constituents and just see all the joy they had in being with their families and enjoying this time of year. You know, today I'd like to talk with you about a few critical issues that I see that are facing our state. Some will be addressing, some of the issues we'll talk about today will be addressed in the February fiscal session. Some probably in a special session that will most likely be called shortly after the fiscal session. And some of the issues may not hit the floor of the House until 2019. But I still think these are critically important issues. I really hope that people will get involved and engage politically. I see so many folks out at ball games and other civic events. I really hope you'll get involved in your school boards and in your city council meetings. You know, I've traveled to all the city council meetings in my district, been to just about all of the school boards at least once, some of them 2 or 3 times. Really, folks don't see many people from those districts there, and really want to encourage you, maybe you can make a New Year's resolution to at least go to one city council meeting or one school board meeting. You know, it's all about local control. As a legislator, one of my key principles, key values is local control. And to have local control, you have to have local participation. People have to be going to their school boards. You have to be going to your city councils. You have to know the issues and go there and have your input. So let me really encourage you in 2018 to take some time and get involved politically. It's very important. Later on today, I hope we're going to have one of my fellow legislators call in. I hope he's listening now. I know I'm counting on him to call in after the break. I look forward to that. But one of the key issues I hear in talking with constituents, I go to all the parades. I've been to the coffee shops. I travel around and meet with people. Folks, Arkansans want to be free. Let that soak in. Sometimes we don't really put the emphasis and don't understand how important it is and how good it is to live in a free nation, in a free state. I'm a little bit of a transplant from Arkansas. I grew up in the big city of St. Louis and was so fortunate to play basketball there and transferred down here to Arkansas State University. And I remember flying in over Jonesboro and looking down on the country, and I loved to hunt and I loved to fish, and landing here and just falling in love with the state. And one of the things I loved was the individual responsibility and the accountability that people took, not just for themselves, but for their local communities. People take care of each other in Arkansas. They take care of their families. They take care of their friends. And that's one of the things that, I think we have lost a little bit of. We've allowed the government to come in at the federal, state, and local level, and they've kind of injected and inserted and bullied and bought their way into almost every facet of our lives. You know that Arkansas is now one of the most regulated states in the nation. Again, let that sink in. 50 states, we're one of the smallest, yet we are one of the most regulated states in the nation. We're also one of the most highest taxed states in the nation. When you look at our state income tax, our sales tax, all those taxes go in. We're one of the most highly taxed in the nation. By the way, that reminds me, I got a note here from our tax assessor. I know that we had federal legislation that just came up, and it is going to deals with your property taxes and capping that at $10,000 that you can take off. And I've had several constituents call me about that. And this comes from the Association of Arkansas Counties. I think I'll try to get Joe maybe to post this later. I'll try to put it up on my Facebook page. But several people have called me and called our tax collector and assessor about prepaying their property tax. And let me go through this just real quickly. It says, with the new tax passage passed by Congress and signed by President Trump, federal income tax will begin to limit the amount of state and local tax payments that can be deducted to a $10,000 cap beginning in 2018. And the question raised by everybody is, can I prepay those taxes, 2018 taxes, can I prepay those before January 1st and not have to be under that same rule? Well, folks, the answer is no. It says the Arkansas law articulates that property tax ad valorem taxes shall be due and payable on and from the first business day in March to and including October 15th. This does not allow a provision for the prepayment of taxes. They say a couple of paragraphs after that and they explain it, but the basic answer is no, you can't go in and prepay your tax. That could have a lot of good policy discussions. I'll leave that for Paul when he comes back. I think most of you are aware that the 2018 fiscal session will come in February, and it appears that the hot topics this year are going to be, of course, taxes, the budget, and health care. Let me just share with you my core belief on taxes, and I really try to stick closely to what my core beliefs are on any vote that comes up, and it makes it pretty easy to decide how you're going to vote if you can stay with your core belief. My core belief on taxes is that, first of all, it's not a tax cut if the state collects more money the following year. So if we say we're going to cut taxes in 2017, yet at the end of 2017 we spent more money than we did or collected more money than we did in 2016, we haven't really had a tax cut. That's just a core belief of mine. Another is that we can't have a tax cut if we don't reduce our spending. We have to have spending reductions if we're going to have a tax cut. Now, I know I've learned a little bit since then, and I've kind of understood a little bit more about how the Arkansas tax code works and how the balanced budget works in Arkansas. So there's a strong argument to be made that if the first thing we do is cut taxes, then we will have no choice but to cut spending. That's a really good strategy, and I'm buying in more and more to that. You know, folks tend to spend every dime they bring in. Arkansas is no different. I'm no different. I take that back. I've been able to save quite a bit, hence I retired recently. But again, if your core principle is to reduce that spending and cut and reduce spending before you raise taxes, and to me that's a core issue that I don't think that we're going to have to address in the legislature with this tax reform task force. Notice I call it task force. I still believe they do a lot of good work there in many of our task forces. But they're addressing that in the forum going on now. And we're talking about ways to address the tax issue. And again, if we don't look and get a handle on our spending, it's going to be really hard to reduce taxes. You know, I don't think this task force is going to come up with any strong suggestions now. They'll come up with those late in 2019 or 2018, and those will come up in 2019 legislative session. Listen, we're getting ready to jump into a break. I'm going to let you go. Hope you'll come back with us on the other side. Again, this is State Representative Dan Sullivan from District 53. When you come back, we're going to talk about some health care issues and maybe Arkansas Works and a few of those. Joe, do we have our special guest? Good, we got our special guest on the line. Representative John Payton has a few words for us. So we're going to go to break and see you on the other side. Thank you.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works Obamacare private option, has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. You're listening to the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, the Paul Harrell Program.
Good afternoon again, everyone. We're so glad to have you back at the Paul Harrell radio program. This is State Representative Dan Sullivan filling in for Paul while he takes a few days off. Again, I appreciate you being here, and I think we have on the line State Representative John Payton. John, are you there?
Yeah, good afternoon, Dan. How you doing today?
Well, listen, I appreciate you joining me and helping bail me out here a little bit.
Well, I think it's great that you got to host a radio program today. I came to work this morning, had no idea what you were up to, and, I've got a real job, and found a newspaper clipping laying on my desk. One of my employees had left it there, and it's a newspaper clipping from the Jonesboro Sun, letter to the editor by Senator John Cooper, who I like and who I supported in his first run to be senator. But anyway, so I texted you a picture of it and to see if you were aware of it, and you invited me to be on the radio show. So
as a matter of fact, I'm very aware of it, and that was
opportunistic.
Was going to make that a part of the radio show today. When it comes to the health care debate and funding, John, the liberals and many of the Democrats have always come with this throw granny off the cliff style. And, it's really surprising to me that we have Republicans turning to that tactic. You'll notice in that article, which was in the Jonesboro Sun, I think, a week or so ago, that's kind of the tactic or the strategy this article took, is that we fellow Republicans are going to be throwing granny off the cliff. Again, it's not a new tactic, but it's a new tactic that I'm hearing Republicans use against fellow Republicans. And John, I know you and I know those of us that have not supported Arkansas Works or the private option or Obamacare in any form or fashion. We all support taking care of the people that are most needy. In fact, what Arkansas Works has done and Obamacare has done is pull money away from the people that are most needy and use state tax dollars and federal tax dollars to pay for people's insurance who are healthy, young, working, able-bodied parents without kids. But, John, you brought up another point to me. You talked about this point that Senator Cooper makes in the article that those of us on the right wing, I didn't know I was a right-winger, but now I guess I am now, labeled wear that label proudly. But you brought up a constitutional issue to me that I thought I agree with and really appreciate your ability to articulate that. Go ahead.
Well, when I read the article, I was concerned about a couple of things, but there's the health care debate and, what's right or wrong and how we balance that with our responsibility to the tax-paying citizens versus the needy citizens. And we've had, I got elected, I started my first term in 2013 when the private option was the big deal, and we had that fight. But, all that concerns me, and, of course, the 80,000 that they're now removing from the rolls that we find out have been fraudulently on the rolls for the last 4 years. But what bothers me more is the thing that seems to infect a lot of legislators' thinking, in that everything should be decided by a simple majority. The Arkansas Constitution, has a provision that if we're going to spend the taxpayers' money, that we have to have a supermajority in agreement on how to spend that money. And that's not something that we as legislators have the power to change. I mean, that's a vote of the people. It would take a constitutional amendment to change that. But they have found a way around it. And what I read in this letter to the editor is that Senator Cooper seems to support getting around the supermajority. Anything that we do down there is policy. And, of course, to pass a bill and to change a law that does not affect money, it just takes a simple majority. And he seems to make the argument in his letter to the editor that, if you're in a minority which would be 49 or less, that you should not be dictating anything that has to do with policy, and he seems to make the leap that would include the funding. And so the misconception that so many people have is that we have to defund an entire agency or shut down government because we're having an argument over a particular policy. But that decision is made by the simple majority to tie the controversial issue to the entire budget, so that instead of just voting on one particular issue, that the minority who are trying to make sure it takes a supermajority to pass the funding, they have no choice but to vote on an entire budget or an entire agency's budget. We were promised in 2013, when the private option was coming through, that they would separate it from the DHS budget and that we'd have a separate vote on it. And they actually got a few people to vote for the policy by promising them that they'd have the opportunity to vote against the funding, the appropriation. And so I've witnessed that. I've been there now for 5 years, and it's just disingenuous to try to argue that we should back everything down to a simple majority when the Arkansas Constitution, which we do not have the power as legislators to change, calls for a supermajority when you're spending the taxpayers' money. If we have an item that we can't agree on, there's no reason to shut down an agency or to shut down the government. That decision's made by the majority that are not willing to get the extra votes it takes to spend money.
John, we kind of face this same issue with the veterans tax and the veterans tax cut. When it was coupled with a tax increase, and we couldn't separate those, weren't allowed to separate those, and many of us wanted to separate them because many of us favored a tax cut for the veterans, but we didn't favor a tax increase on the other side of that. But we weren't allowed to separate the two. They were pushed together, and we were forced to vote up or down on that. I don't remember how you voted on it, but I just didn't vote for it. I don't like the tactic. I don't like the style. And it seems like we're in the same position right now, again, that we disagree on Obamacare going forward, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, or I'm going to on the show as the show progresses. But we're being forced into a corner, and it looks like Senator Cooper and others are trying to set the narrative that those of us who oppose Obamacare want to shut down DHS, and it's just not the case.
Well, the Constitution of Arkansas says that if you have 25 members in the House, that would be 25%, who agree that something should not be spent. We should not be spending our money on something like this. That the Arkansas Constitution says that we should put the brakes on and that we should come up with a policy that enough people can agree on to fund it. And but what they've done, and this is not just a private option thing. Like you said, it could be the veterans tax cut and other things. Well, what they've done is they've found that we can't void what's in the Constitution, but we can avoid it by making these arguments. And so if you have 51 votes, you can pass a law and you can pass a policy that dictates that we're going to spend money. But the same 51 votes will also keep you from separating that item out from the agency budget or from the state budget when we vote on the whole budget together. And it's sad that they're using this tactic, because every dollar that we spend that's hard-earned by the taxpayers of Arkansas, it should require the supermajority that our Constitution intends for it to.
John, I appreciate you coming on. We're getting ready to go to a hard break. Thank you for your wisdom. I appreciate your friendship, the knowledge that you have of the Arkansas Constitution, Arkansas law, and the knowledge you have of the people of Arkansas. Maybe we can get some language in this funding that will limit. I think Josh Miller had a bill trying to limit enrollment or cap enrollment. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to bring that up and we can get that moved through. Thanks again,
Absolutely.
Representative Payton, and we'll see everybody back on the other side.
Stuck in a state of...
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
And I've done some research on this, and I think one thing is they need to clear up what is the actual Texas law. I don't think we've ever heard yet, or I haven't, and I've been busy today, but on allowing carry, because like I said, a lot of pro-carry states ban it in churches. And so on the sign issue, many states will say, we ban carry. We did the opposite here in Arkansas. I listened to several of the churches, sit down and worked with them, and I think that what we came up with is it's the individual carry person that's carrying with the permit to know the responsibility, know the rules, and have permission from the church or know the rules before they go in there. If you have to post a sign, the tragic part about that is that if you have 10 churches out there and 3 of them don't want any carry at all, which I don't agree with, but yet they don't want that, under my bill, they don't have to post a sign. But, Paul, we just had the campus carry debacle by Jeremy Hutchison, Dismaying, Hendren, a whole host of them that went through this thing. That changed it. So now if you have an enhanced carry, which we still don't even have yet, if you have this enhanced carry permit and a church does not want to, say the Catholic Church or the Methodist Church that has a hierarchy, I think they were originally opposed to my bill, and they wound up being okay with it, I think, in some level. But now, even if they don't want any carry at all, even enhanced carry, they're going to have to post a sign. Well, that's dumb for Asa Hutchison to do that. Okay,
it's making churches vulnerable. It'll make churches vulnerable.
It's just making a church say we're a gun-free zone. I mean, it's just, and I tried to talk to them and say, but once again, they pulled the bill out of committee several times. Myself and some other senators had it blocked and wanted to talk about things and try and work things out. No, they don't do it. They just go ahead, and that's why we had the debacle that we had.
Unbelievable. And it's so frustrating. It was. So so you tried to talk to them, and were you? What did you say? Were you like, hey, you guys are going to undo a key component of the Church Protection Act?
Yeah, that's right. Senator Hendren doesn't want criticism, and so he just. I talked to him. I pulled him back there in the back room, and I said, Jim, I said, hey, let's just work on.
Paul Harrell Program.
Good afternoon again. Against Representative Dan Sullivan, District 53, filling in on the Paul Harrell radio program, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Really appreciate Representative Payton coming on. Folks, if you drive around northeast Arkansas, you may see I got a few billboards up there, and the billboards say, "From God to us, life and liberty." From God to us, life and liberty. I believe that. I believe it strongly, and most Arkansans that I visit with believe that also. And what does that liberty mean? And what does it mean from God to us, life and liberty? It means that you are responsible and you are accountable for your actions, and that government takes care, that you don't need government to step in and take care of every facet of your life. And that's kind of what we've gotten into in the healthcare debate, is how big does government need to be? How intrusive should government be in healthcare? That's exactly what's happened with Obamacare, with Arkansas are the private option and Arkansas Works. I think when you go down to the Marble Palace, as Paul calls it, I'll call it the house because I'm proud to be there. And you hear people talk behind the scenes, and you hear legislators just talk candidly about things. Most legislators would agree that the private option, Obamacare, and Arkansas Works was more about money than it was health care. It was more about money than it was health care. What I mean by that, before I became a state legislator, I was in business. Many of you know that. And the previous administration, the Beebe administration, wanted to cut or bend the cost curve, they called it, on Medicare. And I met with the deputy director of DHS, and they said, well, we got to bend the cost curve 5% or 10%. And a whole group of us that provided health care for children and adults and Medicare and Medicaid, we sat down and we said, we'd be glad to do that. We can help you cut at least 5%. We can probably cut 10%. They never got back to us on that. And it really seemed quite strange to me. When that was their stated goal, we sat down around the table, offered to help them do that, and they refused, or declined at least. Well, a few months after that, I got back with the deputy director and asked again, what we needed to do and how we could move forward together. And the deputy director said, I don't know why you oppose this program. Your company and your people will make more money under the new program. And I looked at her and thought, now, how can that be? I thought you just told me that you wanted to cut 5 or 10%. Now you're telling me if we will go with your program, we'll actually make more. Well, it became obvious then that the state didn't, it would be nice if we could bend the cost curve to Medicaid spending, and we have, and we needed to, and we have cut it significantly. But what the state was really after was federal money. We wanted the millions and billions of dollars that would come into the state if we went to the federal program, one of which was Obamacare, then the private option, now Arkansas Works. Several years ago, that is the situation that I found myself in, and I find myself back there today. There are many of our legislators will tell you they voted for private option and Arkansas Works because Arkansas wanted the money, and if we didn't take it, the money would go to other states. Well, that was just not a true claim. That was not accurate, but it was really a good line to put out there. We were made a lot of promises along the way. Look, if we'll go down this path, we're going to increase competition, cost will go down, we're going to limit enrollment to 250,000, people will get into work, we'll have co-pays. All these wonderful scenarios were laid out if we would just walk down that road, plus we'll get all this federal money. Well, those of us that did not buy into that, and I've not voted for Arkansas Works either time it's come up before me, will not vote for it again unless it moves in the other direction of actually reducing that. But, again, the state wanted the money to come in there. Those of us that opposed it said, that's a false promise. At some point, the bill will come due, and we're going to take in the money, and when the bill comes due, we won't be able to afford it. Well, guess what? That day is here. And now as we are moving from a 5% Arkansas cost of the total, which is, folks, $500 plus a month, and those 80,000 people that you probably read about recently that were cut from the rolls, we've been paying $500 a month for 80,000 healthy, working age, able-bodied adults, to the detriment of people that we have in Arkansas who have a significant need. I know I'm chasing a rabbit here, but I met with a gentleman the other day who works with the PACE program here in Jonesboro. They have about 200 people, many of them wheelchair-bound, elderly, I think 55 and older, with significant health care problems. They have no fax machine in their office. They don't get mail in their office. They don't have computers that are up to date. But yet we're paying for people again, able-bodied, healthy, working-age adults. We'll spend $500 a month on them. It's time that we take a serious look at this. We applied for waivers. I think last year we passed a bill that allowed the governor to ask the feds for a waiver that would give us work requirements, reduce enrollment by 60,000, do some means testing for people. I'm sure you heard about the people that had $1 million house or a $500,000 house in North Carolina on Arkansas Works. We were going to do some means testing. We were going to have a copay where people would pay $13 a month, I think, which, again, that hasn't worked either. I think we're about $8 million in the hole by people not paying that. Reducing to 60,000 won't hardly get us back to the original promise of 250,000. And I'm curious as to why we no longer hear about Arkansas Works creating a competitive environment for insurance companies. Blue Cross Blue Shield owns 70% plus of the market. Hardly a competitive market, more of a monopoly in the state of Arkansas than anything. When you look at all those waiver requests that we've made, that were made back, I think, in May or maybe in April, they've not occurred. We haven't achieved those. Why would we continue to wait and ask for those? At the federal level, and all of our federal legislators passed this and voted for it, at the federal level, we removed the individual part of the individual option of the Obamacare, which was one of the primary legs of Obamacare. And our president and others have said their goal is to eliminate Obamacare. If that's true, why are we continuing to go down this path of expansion, wasted money, promises unkept, and maybe they're unkept not because anybody wants to defraud someone or lie, they're just not being met and we're not reaching those goals. And folks, there are options. Again, I mentioned Representative Miller introduced a bill last session just to cap the enrollment. And as people dropped off the rolls, we don't enroll new people. There are lots of options out there. And of course, these people would then go on the federal Obamacare and just get them off the Arkansas rolls. But there are options out there besides us right-wingers just trying to throw Granny over the cliff. Folks, I know a lot of you out there. I've worked with you in church. I've taught your kids in school. I've sat down with you at the coffee shop. I think most of you know me. You know that I have a heart for the people of our state that are in need. I have a heart for the people who need our help, who need the state and our local churches and people to step up. Folks, we can do that. We don't need the federal government jumping in here on us, telling us what we need to do, telling us how we need to operate. We need to exercise some of these options ourselves. I've got just a few more things we're going to go through when we come back from break, but we're going to run to break again for a few minutes. I really, again, appreciate you being with me here. This is Dan Sullivan on the Paul Harrell radio program, and we'll be right back.
Order. In the name of public safety, order. This meeting of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards is called to order in the name of public safety. What's on the agenda for the day?
We have before us today, per our summons, a representative from the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing cosmetology, cosmetologist, and all things hair care and beauty.
Right. Of course, I remember this. In the name of public safety, ma'am, please state your name for the record, and thank you for appearing before us today.
Yes, my name is Cosmo Glamour Gazette, and I'm here in response to a letter our state board received claiming we're in violation of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards. In the letter, you claim that our licensing board is in violation of your rules and regulations because we have failed to, quote, pay tribute, end quote, and therefore have not been granted a license by the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing licensing boards to, quote, shake down the Arkansans who have an interest in cosmetology, end quote.
In the name of public safety, order. Yes, Miss Gazette, we sent you that letter because you have not obtained our approval in the form of a license from our board to distribute licenses to the professional class your board strives to protect. In the name of public safety, of course.
Of course.
So, in the name of public safety, and just so we can get this for the record, you do admit and agree with our board, the Arkansas State Licensing Board, governing state licensing boards, that you have not obtained a license, thereby revealing your board of cosmetology to be operating outside our rules, regulations, and authority?
Well, sir, I'm not sure our board agrees that we need a license from your board to continue to shake down, to look out for the public safety of Arkansans.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
Well, it seems we are at a bit of an impasse if we are not in agreement that your board owes us tribute.
Sir, maybe we could ask and see if there's a bureaucrat in the house.
Ah, yes. Yes, that would shed some light on things. A bureaucrat. Yeah, in the name of public safety, is there a bureaucrat in the house? We need someone to resuscitate and confirm our authority as the Arkansas State Licensing Board, governing state licensing boards.
Here.
Ah, yes. Oh, good. Come to the end of the table in the name of public safety and state your name for the record, please.
Yes, I am Despot Ringleader, the head of the bureau governing all state bureaus, and it is my testimony the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards does have the authority to demand tribute in this situation and will provide in exchange a license to say they can continue to operate in the name of public safety.
It's hard to argue when the public safety is put at risk. Very well. We will consider Mrs. Ringleader's testimony as truth, and we will pay tribute in the name of public safety, of course.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
He puts the Paul in politics. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Back again, this is State Representative Dan Sullivan on the Paul Harrell radio program. We appreciate you staying tuned. Let me kind of close the loop on this with an old adage that says when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is stop digging. When we have to ask for a waiver for work requirements, when we have to try to reduce the enrollment by changing the requirements from 138 to 100% of the poverty level, when we have to ask businesses to start picking up and join the Arkansas Works, when we have to start means testing and asking for income requirements, when we have to start asking for co-pays, when we have essentially created a monopoly in the insurance agency and the insurance market, it seems like we would have to admit, yeah, we're in a hole. And let's stop digging. You know, I guess the other one, that the old adage is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Senator Cooper's article seems to, he doesn't get at the heart of Arkansas Works, but it seems like he's admitting that the Arkansas Works is in a hole, but he says, let's not fix it. And those of you that do try to fix it, you are radical right-wingers. And again, proud to be one and look forward to having this debate in the House as the budget comes up. You know, Paul's really good about talking about some of the behind-the-scenes issues that are important from that side of it. One of the important issues coming up you're not going to hear a lot about, except maybe on Paul's show, is when the House picks a new speaker. We'll be picking a new speaker designate after the fiscal session. We'll go into private session, closed session. We'll have 2 or 3 or 4 candidates who want to be the new speaker, and we'll have an election at that time. The formal election and the official election of the speaker doesn't happen until we go back into session in 2018. But this informal election allows us to get a speaker in place so that they can get ready for a job. And folks, it's a huge job, and the folks that take on that responsibility just do a tremendous service for the state of Arkansas. They spend a lot of hours, a lot of time away from their families. They get a lot of grief from a lot of us and others for the way things that are done. But it's a critically important job and one that requires just a lot of diligence, time, patience, and effort. You know, when we elect the speaker, right now the speaker gets to appoint the chair, the co-chair, and committee members to select committees. Folks, we really need to change that. I'm unfortunately one of the ones that voted to allow that, although it wasn't, again, it's not a final vote. The final vote doesn't come until 18, and I've already had discussions, as I know several other House members have, about the process and the candidates for the Speaker. Are they willing to allow us to pick those positions by seniority? You know, our state Senate does that. Seems to work out pretty well for them. But in the House, the way it stands now, our Speaker is going to appoint those people. Well, folks, let me tell you, the people from District 53, I'm on the Agri Committee, and my family, my wife's side are farmers. They farm over in Monette and in that region, been farmers for generations. I was raised in St. Louis, Missouri. I never got close to a garden, much less a farm. But, you know, I understand the importance, and I'm their representative for District 53. And we have farmers all over our district who are very willing to give me good advice, sound advice, just as they did on the dicamba issue. And I heard from farmers on both sides of that issue, went down to committee meetings, traveled around the state with the plant board and listened to those folks and found out what's important to those issues. As a representative, my job is to represent the people of my district. And if the people of my district want me on the Agri Committee, that's my responsibility. It shouldn't be left up to the Speaker of the House to put me where he thinks I might best be suited, or where they think I might do the least harm, whichever one comes first. But, you know, folks, that just isn't the right way to do it. We need to let these positions and committees be picked based upon seniority. Put them where the people that you represent, where they want you to be. I really hope you'll call your local representative and really encourage them to vote for a speaker that will allow us House members to pick our positions on seniority. Again, that's just critically important. It's a little bit of inside baseball. You'll probably hear a little bit more about that from Paul as that comes up. But again, let me encourage you to do that and take the time. Just another important issue that I think will hopefully come up in the special session. If you've been watching and listening to Paul's show, you've heard a lot about the Enhanced Carry Act 562. Folks, that's another bad vote on my part. I freely admit it. Good intentions, as many of us did, but as what often happens when things get rushed through, what turned out to be a very simple bill by Senator Linda Collins Smith and others to allow professors in our colleges and universities to have, if they have a concealed carry license, to concealed carry on Arkansas State University campus. Well, that bill got pulled and pushed and tugged, and again, Paul's talked about it in many different ways, but I really hope that we'll revisit that in a special session. Again, it's up to the governor first to call the session, and he'll have his issues that he puts on the table there, and I really hope that will be one. We need to come back and look at that. I met yesterday with a couple of concealed carry instructors. One of them said it's just a mess, and that he knows a lot of concealed carry instructors who are just not going to reapply. First of all, one of the reasons he said now that Trump is the president, not as many people see the need to carry a gun. I think that's I kind of got a good kick out of that. He said under the Obama administration, he had classes of 48 and 50. And now he's got Trump in office and classes are 14 and 15. And he said, but once we go to this enhanced carry, a lot of people aren't going to, instructors won't go back and go through the training, the additional expense for the little bit of money they make on it. The other side of it, I guess, is he said that if they do split it down where you can teach both of them, you can teach enhanced carry and you can teach concealed carry, which I would support and hope we can have a vote to do that and allow instructors to have their choice, do one or both. He said it's not going to be worth taking the time to do that for the people, and he will just price it out of people's reach. Now, folks, these are instructors. These are the people that we rely on to keep us safe, to teach the courses properly. They're going to just price people out of doing that because it's not worth their time to do that. It's what's called a free market. And when we put restrictions on the free market, when we talk about enhanced carry and all the different things, we're just pricing ourselves right out of our Second Amendment right. You know, I'm a constitutional carry person. I've mentioned that several times. I think the Constitution is very clear that our Second Amendment shall not be abridged. Now, I'm certainly willing to talk to people and have a discussion and pass something that will move the ball in the right direction. But again, I think we made an error with this enhanced carry legislation. I hope that we'll come back in the next session in some kind of a special session and address that. And before we go here, we're getting ready to go to break. I just got a couple of minutes, but I want to bring up this issue at Arkansas State University on the campus with First Amendment. You know, Arkansas State, I want to brag on them a little bit before I get into anything else, but, you know, Arkansas State allows many of our religious organizations, our churches, to have facilities on campus. We have a Baptist Student Union, a Church of Christ, a Catholic, a Methodist, all those and others, all on our campus. And I applaud Arkansas State University for stepping out and being courageous in the responsibility and our constitutional right to exercise the freedom of religion. They've done a great job on that. As far as this lawsuit goes, if you're familiar with what happened, a group called Turning Point USA and an ASU student, Ashlyn Hoggard, allegedly violated ASU policy when they set up an informational table. And ASU officials came in, shut them down, and I think they may have banned Turning Point USA from campus. Not sure about that. But anyway, a group called the Alliance Defending Freedom stepped in to defend Ashlyn and the Turning Point USA. And these Alliance Defending Freedom, these are big-time folks. If you're familiar with James Dobson, James Kennedy, some of these great faith leaders in our nation were the people behind this alliance group. Well, the Alliance Defending Freedom has now stepped in. They picked up the case. They filed suit against ASU. And again, I'll brag on ASU a little bit. You know, I got a call the very next morning from ASU officials, and they assured me that they took this seriously. They value freedom of speech. And again, I know the administration, know them well. I've worked with them on a number of projects. I value them making that comment to me. I've talked with, again, several of the top officials there, and I'm confident that ASU will step forward and protect our First Amendment rights on campus, and look forward to addressing this in the coming year, and hopefully you'll be hearing more about this. You know, but I can't, again, help but tie this to our Second Amendment right. You know, what ASU was charged with or sued over was having certain zones where one had to be within that zone within a certain time frame, a scheduled time frame, in order to exercise their First Amendment right. And they're being sued over that. As a matter of fact, I heard somebody in the paper the other day called that a right-wing position to sue for your First Amendment right. Again, I'm proud to be a right-winger. I'm proud to be on this side of it when we are defending our First Amendment. And I feel the same way about our Second Amendment right. Why is it that our colleges are going to be given under this enhanced carry law? All our colleges and universities have to do is write a special policy, and they can opt out. Well, how is it an organization can opt me out of my Second Amendment right? It just doesn't seem right. And again, I think those two issues are closely tied, and I hope we'll get together in a special session and go to these. Well, let me look through my notes here. You know, I never thought I would see my face on a billboard, and now I got billboards around town. I never thought I would host a radio program, and here I am behind a mic hosting a radio program. And folks, it's a lot of work. I retired just a few days ago. The ink is not even dry on my resignation, and here I am with a full-time job today. But I have really enjoyed it. I hope to see you on the other side, and again, appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. Thank you.
Rush, Glenn, Sean and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
This bill, you may wind up getting what you want. I may vote for it. I may not. I don't know yet. But I said, let's just slow the process down. Let's have a discussion about it. Because the one thing about gun bills is, Paul, it's just like dealing with guns in real life, like I was taught by my dad. You have to be careful. You have to think about every situation. You have to go through a lot of different things. They rushed the whole thing through. I mean, it was all a bunch of backroom deals, the NRA. I don't even know what the heck they did. You know, it was all relationships, and they all wanted to get something passed and do something. And another thing, too, is about the enhanced carry part. Well, I mean, we've had the bill in effect now for 4 years. And we fortunately hadn't had any incidents or any problems with it. Like I said, it's very respectful. The nation wants to do in their own policy. And so they basically said, no, we want to decide for you. And I don't agree with that. I mean, I think whatever policy you should have should be respectful. I didn't agree with the previous policy of these people down there in Little Rock deciding that everybody shouldn't have carry in churches and just basically deciding it. And it's still that way today in a different level that, they feel like they need to decide what's best for everybody.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. And that's the whole, that's the entire enhanced concealed carry, whatever you want to call it, in a nutshell. When Asa Hutchinson, he called the Second Amendment a privilege that the government essentially gives people. They do not trust people with their natural rights. Like they don't trust. They want you to have a gun if you can satisfy Governor Asa Hutchinson's concerns about you having a gun. Then you can have one, and that's just not.
That's right.
That's just not what.
And if you have the extra time and money, you can do it.
Exactly. It's a joke, but I am glad. I hope other states do look to your bill, Senator Brian King, again from 2013, was successful, is the law. I hate that it's been undermined or changed. If some of these people don't want enhanced carry, they've now got to put a sign out there, which is going to make them more vulnerable. I hope something like that could get fixed in the future. But while I have you here, I'd like to kind of explore on some of the latest headlines that we haven't gotten to talk in a few weeks, but specifically, you had the Trump administration essentially ending the subsidies to insurance companies. As a result, or sort of an indirect result, we have the Arkansas Insurance Department approving these huge, 19, 20, 21% increases in premiums on the people of Arkansas. Everybody's gotten a letter. People are really upset about it. And now we find out, and I know that, the state of Arkansas charges these insurance companies premiums, 2.5%. And so when the price goes up, it actually means there's more tax dollars, tax revenue that comes into the government. So there's a real perverse incentive structure going on that actually the government's going to benefit from us paying higher premiums.
sure, they're going to get more money. And it was Senator Jonathan Dismang who deceives people. He snuck it through on an appropriation bill in special language, and it was helped by the Joint Budget Chairman. So all the insiders ushered it through. It wound up being a huge tax raise. That's what it was. It was a total deceiving way of multiple times. I mean, you look at Senator Dismang, that, he comes up with this legislation. I mean, he's, it could be that he needs to answer questions about his ties to Blue Cross Blue Shield, because we've continued to be, the taxpayers have continued to pay for a much more expensive form of Medicaid expansion that is far more than the $215,000 that was originally projected to be on the program. And yet there's questions I think he needs to answer about his ties to Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, he runs the legislation, and, I sit there and chat.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Welcome back, everyone. Again, it's State Representative Dan Sullivan here on the Paul Harrell Radio Program. I'm going to kind of wrap it up here in the next few minutes and then turn it back over to the studio to Joe to play a few things. But, yeah, I'd really be interested in your feedback. We talked about several topics, from health care to picking a speaker to, Arkansas, Kansans and their freedom. Talked about several issues. I'd like for you to take just a few moments and list the topic, how your impression of my position today, so I can get feedback from you. And if you would just kind of text a thumbs up or a thumbs down to Joe, my feelings won't get hurt. I'm really interested in how you feel, but you can text that to 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Just mention a topic and how you felt about my position on that, and give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It'll give us a little bit of information on what topics are important to you and what you want to hear more about. Oh, and by the way, if you want to hear more about it, the Paul Harrell radio program on January the 8th will be moving from 6 to 8 a.m. We're adding more stations to it. They're opening up on a station called The Answer down in Little Rock at 96.5. I'm, of course, down there in Little Rock quite a bit, and going to be really anxious to hear what Paul has to say on that program, and being down there in Little Rock. We've also talked about a couple of real important issues on the health care side of this, and if you'll go over to Conduit for Action, there's a really great article that was published just today called Declaring Success While Ignoring the Shipwreck. Conduit is never bashful or shy about expressing their opinion on things. But the article, whether you think it's a shipwreck or a cruiser running down the line, whatever your thoughts are, there's some great data there. And the data speaks for itself. And you read through the data, you look at what the real numbers are. When you hear, and it's published, that we've just cut 80,000 people from the rolls of Arkansas Works, you think, golly, what a great deal. But when you realize 80,000 people have been on there for 4 years, you realize that the numbers are still well over 300,000. You realize that we have people that aren't working. And folks, I talked to some of the lead top folks at DHS that told me that there were 30,000 people not working and don't want to work. Folks, how do we how do we go forward with that, and how do we promote a system like that? Again, to me, it's time to cap that, time to quit digging and start working our way out. Another group that Paul has talked to several times has been a group called the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, ACRE. Great group of gentlemen down there, do a lot of good research. They're down at UCA, quite a bit of research on all these topics. They've been talking recently about occupational licensure and how Arkansas is a state that has one of the most licensed states in the nation. I've had 3 bills I've submitted and tried to get through in the last few years that have not passed. One of the most important ones, I think, is for advanced practice nurses. We call them APRNs. These are nurses that go to extra school. They've been trained specifically in special things. They are highly qualified, well-trained, certified professionals who really know how to do their job. And Arkansas restricts their ability to perform their license. That's done by the Arkansas Medical Board. In fact, it wouldn't take a bill to change that. The Arkansas Medical Board could just by a stroke of the pen say, we're now going to recognize advanced practice nurses and allow them to practice to the full scope of their licensure. In fact, the Veterans Administration, hospitals nationwide allow nurses, APNs, to practice to the full scope of their licensure. So if you're an APN in the Veterans Hospital in Little Rock, you can practice everything you were trained and professionally qualified to do. However, if you walk a couple of blocks and go to a hospital, you're now restricted, and you can't practice to that extent. There are just a couple of other things that really, I don't want to get into too much detail, but when an APN bills most of the billing codes they bill, it's less than what they bill at a doctor's code. However, if the APN is in a building with a doctor, they can bill on the doctor's rate, which is higher. Now, folks, again, it is not rocket science to realize that if we would take advantage of some of those types of things, that there are many opportunities for us to reduce our spending in Medicaid and Medicare by fully accessing the resources that we have. That our steel mill over in, Joe, I'm blanking on their name, our steel mill over in Blytheville, I just went blank. Those folks have have clinics all over the nation, and they tried to open a clinic right here in Blytheville, a free clinic for all of their employees, all of their families. I'm sorry? Big River Steel. Oh, wrong one. Anyway, they're going to open a medical clinic for all of their employees and provide free health care, and they were going to utilize an APN. And the state medical board would not allow them to open a clinic like that. And it's been a few weeks ago, but I met with one of the vice presidents of the company, and they told me that it's harder to open a clinic in Arkansas than it is in any state where they have facilities. Now, that's just hard to believe, but it's what goes on in our state when we have these licensing boards that place way too many restrictions on them. You can call it a monopoly, or we can operate under a monopoly, or we can operate under a free market. And personally, I think the free market works out every time. Folks, I'm going to throw it back to Joe in the studio. We're going to go to break in just a few minutes. Again, it's been my pleasure to be with you here today. I appreciate the opportunity. Please take a moment or two and just text us and let me know what your opinions are on some of these things. If you need me to get back with you, I'd be happy to do that. Just leave a telephone number and your name, and I'll be glad to call you, sit down with you, and discuss the issues. Again, this is Dan Sullivan, State Representative, District 53, filling in on the Paul Harrell radio program. Have a good evening.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you. Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions. Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. The Paul Harrell Program.
I love my state. I love the Republican Party. It's a hard thing. Ask my mama. Mother, stand up. It's my mother. This is about the future. I love you. Thank you for being bold enough to let me speak when the pressure was on to silence me. She deserves to stay in my
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thunderous applause. Thunderous applause. That audio you just heard was Jan Morgan from the Mississippi County Lincoln Reagan Day dinner. And it was quite an event. It was a packed house. Jan Morgan was responsible for that packed house. Her message resonated. And that, to me, was the most powerful portion of the speech when she referred to the pressure that was mounting for her to be uninvited from that event. And yet, listen to what she said, not to silence me. She's talking about essentially a pretty basic concept, the freedom of speech, and how there were people in the Republican establishment trying to stop that, trying to stop her ideas. And I can tell you that we have new developments after that speech and after that amazing event that resonated so well with the people of Mississippi County. Word has spread, and unfortunately now you have the Sebastian County Republican Women's Group has now uninvited Jan Morgan to speak at their event, signaling that the Republican Party is very worried of ideas, and they are scared that the truth may get out. Joining me now to talk more about this is the lady of the hour. Jan Morgan joins us. Jan, welcome back to the program. with us. Jan, you did a great job at Mississippi County.
Thank you, Paul. It's easy to deliver the right message when it's the truth and when it's the message that the people want delivered. That's what I keep trying to tell the Republican Party. This is not about Jan Morgan. It's about the people of this state. The people spoke a resounding message when they elected Donald Trump in the state of Arkansas. They were trying to send a message to the establishment, and apparently the establishment didn't get it, so I'm trying to send it again. And so when they shut me out, they're shutting out the people of this state.
Mm-hmm. And we just we did talk about the news that broke earlier on your Facebook page, it was out there that the Sebastian County Republican Women's Group has now uninvited you to speak at their event. And I'm telling you, this is in direct result of how your message is resonating with the people. I mean, listen to the applause that we played there, where you said, thank you for standing up and not silencing me. And people went nuts because they all knew that the establishment didn't want you there last night. And now we have some dominoes start to fall. We have people trying to fall in line, it seems like.
Exactly. And, that's going to hurt them more than help them, because what they think that I will do is just silently cower down and get my feelings hurt, say, oh, the Republican Party doesn't want me in. But see, what that does is validate what I've been saying all along, that we have a problem within the Republican Party of this state. And I talked about this openly in my speech. I said, look, I'm not here to divide the party. The party is already divided in a very big way. But here's a novel idea. There's a place that we can all come together. I'm here to help save the party, and I'm telling you that place that we can all meet is the Republican Party platform, right? The Republican Party platform. What's controversial about that? Well, I'll tell you what's controversial about it. You've got a progressive governor who doesn't want to lead the state that way, and you've got people who are riding his coattails who are scared to buck him. So I'm out there throwing the grenades, and the conservatives in the Republican Party who are too cowardly to stand up are egging me on, saying, you go, Jan, tell them, you tell them, but let us hide behind you and generate the results of that. So, I can't single-handedly save the party, but I tell you what, the people of this state can. And the Republicans of this state, every time they uninvite me to an event, I get more support from Republicans in that area. And they say, well, you know what? Forget the Republican Party. We'll have an event for you, and we'll be separate from them. And so that's what we're going to see happen.
Yeah, there's no doubt that that's what's going to happen. So talk a little bit about, your message. I know this is part of your listening tour in a lot of ways. And I think what resonates with your message is the fact that you experienced something that's personal, that no one can take away from you when you were down at the Marble Palace and you saw the way the process was working, and you saw how, if everybody knows, and I've said this for a while, if the people knew what they were really doing in the people's name that they never find out about because nobody wants to cover, the local politics, the people would react accordingly and make another choice. And, you're considering being that other choice, and your story really resonates with the crowd.
Yes, because I went to the state capitol with the assumption that, I know there's politics as usual, but I assumed that there was going to be some accountability and transparency there, because after all, the people own the Marble Palace, and the people there who are supposed to be representing us, we're paying their salary. So I was appalled to discover, number one, of course, we don't have a revenue problem in Arkansas. We have a spending problem. I was appalled at the waste in our government with Republicans at the helm. That has to be fixed immediately. And then I discovered how they're able to get by with this is the lack of transparency. I discovered in judiciary that they have this group voice vote thing rather than a roll call vote. So the citizens of this state have no way of checking into the government website and saying, hey, I want to see how my Republican representative voted on this issue because this shouldn't have passed. That's not Republican Party. We have control of the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. Republicans do. So we should be moving. The conservative movement should be overwhelmingly taking this state back to fiscal responsibility, to deregulating businesses, to cutting taxes. I mean, there are so many things that this government should be doing under Republican leadership, and we're going the wrong direction. I just went to find out why, and I saw it. And I the things I saw and heard in the hallways and the deals being made behind closed doors, it was just revolting. And then when I went into House Judiciary to whip up on those boys, I took them to the woodshed, as those of us in the South would say, and I'm talking about our Republicans. And when I did it in a very public way, that's when thousands of Republicans across this state said, we need you to run for governor because you're the only one who is not afraid to stand up to the establishment, and you're the only one with a large enough base to give this guy a run for his money. And so that's where we are. But speaking of money, Paul, we have to have it to run. That's going to be the deciding factor. That's why we're in exploratory, to see if the citizens of this state are going to back us with their finances as well as their word.
Yeah.
You know, it takes money to fight.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I know you guys do have a website for that, right?
We do. Well, you go to the Facebook page, Jan Morgan for Governor. It's there. I post it on my page. Every time I post anything about Arkansas, which is constantly, under there I put the link to donate. So, but we don't have to have what Asa has. He's got $1.5 million in his coffers, but we can fight with a lot less, just like we can run a government on a lot less. But we have to have the bare necessities.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely do. But your message is a winning message. I mean, it's just demonstrated by last night, and I know you've got other speaking engagements and other places that you're going to be. I think it is.
But I bet they're not going to be Republican engagements. It's going to be interesting to see how many Republican dominoes fall after that speech. When they saw the response of that crowd, I mean, that's the first time Doyle Webb, the state Republican Party chair, was there, which, by the way, I got reprimanded.
Yeah, tell me about
that table when I started talking about one specific example of waste, $20 million tossed, toward Department of Human Services on a contract when the Legislative Review Board that suggested the bid go the other way. When I started talking about that, I mean, the voice from that table was, careful, careful. I mean, it was loud. Everybody in the front 3 or 4 rows heard it.
Weird.
And I even acknowledged it. I looked over at the table and said, oh, I'm being reprimanded from the floor. How interesting is that? So, they're trying to silence me on so many fronts. And the bottom line is, when they're that afraid that they don't want the people to hear your message because they know if the people hear it, the people will support it, and then they lose their gravy train. So fear is pushing that whole let's uninvite Jan to speak agenda, and it makes them look bad, not me.
Yeah, and so much of this defense is also because Asa Hutchinson has such a terrible record. And that's just
his record is egregious,
yeah.
Paul, and I'm constantly posting it on my page, and he can't argue with it. It's all fact-based. That's the crazy thing. He's asking for another term as a Republican. Now, if he would run as a Democrat, he'd probably win the Democrat ticket,
yeah,
but
he would.
He's not.
Well, I mean, for example, so you mentioned the contract, the DHS contract. The current contract provider for this particular service was doing the job, $20 million or more cheaper, and yet Asa went with the one that was more expensive. And the legislatures were just saying, hey, we don't want to do this. He went ahead and did it anyway. When you just point out something like that, and that's basic, and to Little Rock, that's run of the mill. What's $20 million? But when you point out something like that, that's kind of minutia that they don't hear about, but it's very black and white from the Republican Party platform standpoint. It's like, why would he do that? And that is what you say, Jan, don't talk about that. You can't talk about that. That's how bad his record is. That's how bad it is.
Exactly, and unfortunately for them, I don't. They can't. All they can do is try to silence me, and so I expect a lot more of this, Paul. And fortunately, though, for me, you've got Tea Party organizations across this state and just Republicans who are mad at their own committees in their own counties for canceling me. They're planning events for me. So what are they going to do next? Call these people and say, we're going to come after your business if you have an event and host Jan Morgan. I mean, that's what we're getting down to, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and, you hate that for the Sebastian County, Republican women's organization because, I mean, you're a woman, Jan, and wouldn't that be great for their event? But they don't want to have you all of a sudden. That's just so
honestly,
sad.
Paul, that was the most disappointing uninvite I've received so far because it is women. And how often is a woman in a position that I'm in right now to truly bring about change and change toward the Republican Party platform, which is what all these women are supposed to represent. It is most unfortunate, and I know some women in leadership that are really upset about it, and I understand there was quite a bit of arguing about it behind the scenes, but in the end, the cowardly side won.
Well,
let's just don't have her.
I do want to say this. There is a Northwest Arkansas senator, it's come to my attention, going around and saying that at committee meetings or Republican events,
welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Challenged it. Mainstream media will do nothing about it. Blue Cross Blue Shield has cashed millions of dollars in eligible beneficiary people that's getting benefits. And Senator Dismay, John Burris, another one that's getting more money out of the legislation that he helped deceive people on. So, this whole thing of everybody wants to talk about the Clintons and paper play. Well, I think there's possible questions that need to be asked down there, but the media down there is not going to ask it. They're just going to keep covering it up.
Yeah, so, that's very interesting. Because the principle is very straightforward here. The principle is everybody agrees, in theory, that if you're a legislator, you can't make extra money on the side, or I can't pay you, Senator King, to pass a law that says, people in radio broadcasting get these benefits. I can't pay you to do that. That is illegal. And yet, there are potentially, we have the consulting scheme that we see with Mike and Neil and all these others that are now involved in the whole court process, or you see attorneys. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but if you're an attorney, you can take on a client and you can run bills for them, and you can get bills passed for them. And because your attorney, or because the contract that the attorney and client sign says this is not for lobbying purposes, but it could very easily be, and a lot of times I think is, the attorneys are protected. The attorneys are able to essentially operate.
That's the privilege that Representative Ballinger keeps wanting to do. And he keeps saying, oh, well, you don't want to compromise. Well, what they want down there, the insiders want, they want a hole, they want a big, huge hole that they can, loophole that they can jump in and out of and do whatever they want to do. I mean, you look at what's come out, and since you just look at what's come out. I mean, Michael Lamro getting $120,000 check. You look at Jake Files. You look at all this come out, and then every time you file legislation or do something, well, Brian King's a bully. I mean, we had Representative Michelle Gray in the testimony in the committee. Literally, I don't even think the woman even knows what she was saying. Sits there and says, well, my bill was too broad. She then later on contradicted herself later on and said it wasn't broad enough.
Yeah, we have that audio.
I mean, these people just talk out of their head.
And now let's talk about what that was for. Yeah. Okay, that was for your Medicaid disclosure bill.
Medicaid.
In Washington County, their quorum court met, and they met to approve a budget, and they also met to raise millage, raise taxes on the people of Washington County, and that whole process failed. The budget failed. They decided against raising property taxes, and they failed to make the cuts that they need to make, because apparently, for some reason, if you go read the Scarlett Sims piece. Listen to this. Property taxes fail to make significant cuts to stop a $5 million gap between spending and revenue. So somebody is spending more than what's coming in. Joining us now to talk a little bit more about that, I've got somebody, a friend of the program, been on the program many times, young conservative. We have Patrick Deakins is on the line, and he was at that quorum court meeting in the audience last night. Patrick, welcome back to the program, sir.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be able to talk to you, and I always enjoy being on the show on Johnny Cash Friday.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's one of my favorite days to do the show. All right, so tell us a little bit about, what was the atmosphere there? Because I heard, the reason I reached out to you to see if you wanted to come on today is because I heard that the atmosphere was interesting, to say the least. And it really all had to do with whether or not the quorum court was going to raise taxes. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I would say the only silver lining of last night was that the property taxes were not raised. I would say starting the meeting out, I felt pretty somber. I thought the feeling was pretty somber. If you were in the crowd, I think you got the feeling that the budget was going to get passed. And as a direct result of that, if they passed the budget, they would also, they would have had to increase the mills to get the property tax revenue up. So as the process went on and the budget came up as the agenda item, it got very interesting because it did not take long for anyone in the crowd to realize that there was no business having that budget as an agenda item on that meeting last night. The justices of peace were not prepared for that. There was a lot of contention in the room over certain things. There were some amendments that were made to try to reduce spending. They all failed. They were voted down. And so I think at that point it galvanized a lot of the members of the quorum court to defeat the budget, which I don't know how precedented that is. I thought it was pretty unprecedented myself. But so Washington County hangs out today without a budget for next year so far.
That's a big deal. Do you know what the vote was? You know how close it was or anything?
Yes. The budget fell the first time on a vote of 8-6. There's 15 justices of the peace in Washington County. I don't know if that's common everywhere, but one was absent, so that was a sustained vote. And then I believe the second time around, it was an even tie, 7-7. Wow. They voted. The meeting turned into an absolute circus. Paul, I am so embarrassed for my county. I'm embarrassed for the government. I'm embarrassed for the process. They voted the budget down once, and then they had some discussion, and the quorum court members decided, well, maybe we didn't really mean that. Maybe we really didn't mean to vote it down. Let's reconsider.
What?
So they brought it up. They brought it up for a second vote. Yes. It was defeated again, which when it got defeated, the chairman of the budget committee then immediately resigned, which threw the meeting into a little bit more chaos, because then the vice chairman of the budget committee had to introduce the next agenda item, which these last two agenda items were, of course, the budget and then the raising of the millage or raising of the taxes. So the frustration level for me was just through the roof. I can't believe that's the process that our government goes through, and then that these people hold our taxes and our tax increases in their hands. It was just absolutely unbelievable.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. We're talking with Patrick Deakins. He was in the room last night during the Washington County Quorum Court meeting, and the reason this was interesting to me is because there was a potential tax increase on the table, and it didn't materialize. So, correct me if I'm wrong. From what I'm hearing from you is they were going to vote on the budget. But if the budget would have passed, the millage tax increase was already kind of in the budget. And so instead of voting on the budget at first, did you guys have a discussion on whether or not taxes should be raised? That's the first question. Second question is, do you think, was it a partisan divide? Were there a lot of Republicans that were like, we're not going to raise taxes because that's not what the platform says? And were there people in the audience who, are conservatives that maybe were putting pressure to make sure, that the politicians vote the way they campaign?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. And that's one thing I want to say. I want to thank all the citizens of Washington County who reached out to their justices or were at the meeting last night and spoke up in the public comment section, because I think that did have an absolute effect. And some of the justices even commented to the fact of that their positions had probably changed. I got the idea in just the last few days on these issues of raising the taxes and the budget. Overall, I think it was very divided on party lines. Washington County, there's 15 Democratic justices and 10 Republicans. Now, those numbers are a little bit weird because some of those Republicans
now you said
are a little
15 and 10. Do you mean 15 and 5?
I'm sorry, five Democratic, 10 Republican for a total of 15 justices.
Okay.
My bad. I'm
okay.
sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
So some of those Republicans are they lean a little bit more on the liberal side, from my personal opinion. So, to me, this was not a slam dunk along party lines, but fortunately for us, the Republicans stood firm and didn't let the raise of taxes go through. I think what happened was there were some amendments made to the budget when they voted on it the first time, looking to reduce spending. One of the major catalysts of spending here in Washington County is the sheriff's budget. That's divided into two pieces. It's the sheriff's general budget and then the jail. He has asked for a $2 million increase for the fiscal year of 2018 in the budget. There was an amendment to try to cut that in half. And also an amendment to it's budgeted to give Washington County employees a 3.5% raise.
Wow.
And there was an amendment to try to lower that to 3%. Those two spending reductions failed. And
sounds like those are two spending. Those are reductions off of the increase. So it sounds like it would have still been more money.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And so when those reductions and increases failed, I feel like that really galvanized a lot of people against for seeing that budget through. And really, what stood out to everyone in the crowd was just the unpreparedness of debating this budget. There was a lot of justices that were having ideas about how to reduce spending and how to improve the budget and how to reduce the increases once again, and how to try to move this forward. And you're in the crowd and you're looking around and you're like, yeah, these all sound like great ideas. Why has this not been considered before this very moment?
Yeah,
and I believe at one point it was talked, there's a lot that goes into these budgets. Hopefully, there's a lot of labor that goes into them. I'm not going to say there's a lot of thought that went into this budget, but apparently there's a lot of labor. I think somebody finally said that, this is a product of several months, 6 meetings, and $18,000 of the county taxpayers' money in just preparing the budget, and this is the product that we got. And I have not been personally present at any of the budget meetings, but to see that final product walked out into public, like I said, Paul, I'm just absolutely embarrassed for Washington County today.
Wow.
And I just hope that the justices go back in and take this a lot more seriously. We have a county judge here, Judge Joseph Wood, who's doing just an excellent job. And, he's trimmed, last night they said $850,000 off of his budget.
Wow.
His department's budget. And so he's trying to do the best he can. I just am dumbfounded at the lack of support I can see he's getting from these other departments and from the forum court if they're just going to hammer this budget through.
Mm-hmm.
Let me touch on one thing, Paul.
Yeah.
This was mentioned last night in this meeting when the head of the budget committee was defending her job, the one that resigned immediately after the budget was defeated.
Yeah, let me give her name. That's Justice of the Peace, Ava Madison. She's a Democrat, and she resigned last night after the budget failed. Go ahead.
She resigned as the chair of the budget committee.
Yeah, I'm sorry, as the chair. Thank you for correcting me.
In this process where she was describing and defending her job, this is so outrageous to me as a taxpayer. She admits that the only department budget that the budget committee reviewed were if your department was asking for an increase in your spending. If your department's budget remains the same rolling into the 2018 fiscal year on the budget, they did not even look at those department numbers from what she was saying.
Wow.
Is that not outrageous? They're not even looking for savings in other departments. if you can just report and stay within your budget, they'll just rubber stamp you and move you right along. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, and that in a way is apathy or maybe even laziness, because it's just easier to show up to a meeting and pass a budget with a tax increase in it than it is to go through and put some of these departments through scrutiny. And I got a feeling this isn't just a Washington County issue. I'm sure this is in some capacity in all 75 counties across the state of Arkansas. We're talking with Patrick Deakins. He was at this Washington County Quorum Court meeting. The news, though, is that the Washington County is now facing a $5 million gap. Let me ask you this. Part of this was because they wanted to give employees in Washington County a raise, a 3.5% raise. Last year, I thought I remember reading a headline about how they increased their health insurance benefits or in some regard. Do you know anything about that?
Only in generalities, yeah, they increased their health insurance, and I'm pretty sure last year, this is kind of going on a limb. I'm not too factually sure on this, but I believe all county employees, they went through a compensation consultation with an outside group, and I think they all they mentioned last night during the meeting around 8% raises to try to equate them to outside jobs. So this was basically an adjustment on top of raises already received previous.
Wow. And now they're $5 million short. They have a spending problem, a textbook definition of a spending problem, and their solution is to try to find more revenue, not to say we have to go and spend less. So Patrick, where do you think Washington County goes from here? I mean, you're a citizen, of Washington County. What do they do next? I mean, what are their plans? Are they going to look at other departments and try to make cuts in other departments?
Well, fortunately, the millage was passed last night, which to me left the millage the same.
Okay.
So
no increase.
To me, for at least in the foreseeable future, for at least the next year, your property taxes are safe. Now what they've got to do is those justices have got to get real serious about that budget, and they have until the end of the year to do that. So they're really down into a time constraint now. So, what we need to do as citizens is we need to get involved. Somebody turned to me in the audience and said, however much I hate to do it, we're going to have to come down here for these big budget meetings and see what's going on and try to help out in this process.
Yeah.
And just more broadly, it was discussed quite a bit last night, Paul, and I'm sure it's a problem for a lot of other people around the state, but there's being really some battle lines drawn between the municipalities versus the counties versus the state, and how these different revenue streams and tax dollars are allocated between those levels. And particularly in Washington County, one of the aggravations of the county is that they do not feel like they get their fair share. And as these cities grow and annex more citizens in, that lowers their tax dollar pool and their allocations. And so they're having a little bit of trouble budgeting within those limits. And so, that's just another thing that I think is going to be growing pains for a lot of people around the state. We're going to have to keep our eyes on.
You're exactly right. I've once heard it said that politicians who push for tax increases, they do so because they don't have the guts to govern. It sounds like we've got to have people with guts all across the state, but especially in Washington County, to say, okay, we're not. Our knee-jerk reaction is not going to be to raise your taxes because we're spending too much money. Let's get our spending under control, and let's treat this the way we would a household budget. I think that's the path forward. And Patrick Deakins making an incredible amount of sense, giving us a first-hand account from the meeting last night in Washington County. I appreciate it, Patrick. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate you.
All righty. Folks, it's Johnny Cash Friday. That's the... Do you need to advertise your business product or service, but not sure what the best choice is? Folks, allow me to introduce you to Talk Radio. You're listening to it right now. Talk radio is one of the most unique mediums in all of advertising because it actually works. It gets the information you want to the people you want to get it to. And by the way,
Those people are educated, well-informed decision makers of their household, and most of them have disposable income. If this is a target audience for your business, then you have to consider advertising on my show, The Paul Harrell Program. We have options for most any budget and can provide you with exciting opportunities to grow your business. We can put your message across the state, or we can help you locally. Call 870-275-9755 if you have any questions. That's 870-275-9755, or visit my website, paulharrell.com, and click on Advertise.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages, because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Want to go back and listen to previous shows? Apple users can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Don't have an Apple device? Head on over to paulharrell.com and click on Podcast. It's free and available 24/7 because the Liberty Machine never sleeps.
Have the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Arkansas, Tim Griffin, is back with us. Tim, thanks for coming on, sir.
Thanks for having me. Always an honor.
Yes.
I appreciate you allowing me to grace your program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We appreciate it very much. Now, the reason I wanted to have you on is just because I wanted to talk about where you're going to be this Saturday, November the 18th. Randolph County Republicans are putting on their Reagan Day dinner, and you're the big speaker, and it's going to be at the Randolph County Development Center. That's 1410 Highway 304 East in Pocahontas. And I caught, and you referenced this because I saw you at Mississippi County in their dinner, and you did a great job, and you said that the Randolph County is going to get the long version of that speech. And I just wanted to say I thought your ideas were really good. They're powerful, and I really hope that they get implemented in the state of Arkansas.
Well, I think, whether they get implemented over 10 years or 1 year or don't or do, that's a separate issue. I still have an obligation to push. And, I certainly want this stuff to get implemented. We're going to have a good time. See, let me just give you some technical stuff. So the doors are going to open, I think, at 5:30. And let's see, welcome and catered dinner at 6:15. And, it's not going to be, I'm not going to talk too long. We're not going to keep people there all night. It's going to be fun. Should be some good food. I hope folks come and just have a good time. I tell folks, when they're planning these things, don't make them too structured, too stiff, because people want to have a good time. Yeah, they want to go to a Republican event, talk politics, policy, and all that. But at the end of the day, they want to have a good time, and they want to go home saying, man, that was fun. Food was good, had a good time. So I'm going to be, I don't know about everybody else, but I'm going to be pretty darn relaxed. And we're just going to enjoy ourselves. So I hope we get a good crowd up there, and it'll be fun. I've been up there once or twice before to their dinner.
Yeah.
And I've always had a good time, and so I'm excited about it.
Good. Well, I wanted to let the audience know that you're going to be there, and once again, I'm really glad that you could come on. So, you made statewide news a couple of months back when you sent a letter to the task force on tax relief, urging them to get spending under control. You talked a little bit about that Saturday night as well, and you actually came to the point in your speech, and I really loved it when you said we don't have a choice. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we don't have a choice. There's several reasons, but I think the point I was referring to then was other states are implementing some of these transformational ideas. Other states are taking a close look at all parts of government and asking, is this necessary? Is this the best way? What I always say is, I don't care how we've always done it. I don't care how we currently do it. The only thing that matters is how should we be doing it. If we're already doing it that way, then great for us. If we're not, we ought to change. And other states are doing this, and we're in a competition. When jobs go to state A or state B, and they're not going to also come here. It's a choice, right? If we get jobs and another state doesn't, it's a zero-sum game. So there's a limited number of jobs being created in the country at any one time, and we're competing to get them. And I'll give you a couple examples. So I was at a lieutenant governor meeting the other day, and the lieutenant governor of Ohio, who is running for governor, was talking about something called CSI. No, it's not a TV show, although it is. It's called the Common Sense Initiative. And what they are doing is they are going line by line through all the Ohio state regulations, and they're finding the duplicative ones, the wasteful ones, the too complicated ones. They're getting rid of them. They're simplifying them. They're making sure they make sense. And they say, I think the estimate was going to get rid of 2,000 wasteful or duplicative regulations. So Ohio's doing that. I was in Chicago for this particular meeting. I was the lieutenant governor meeting, and the lieutenant governor and governor of Illinois were speaking, and they were speaking about the word transformation. And when I heard them say it, I go, oh my gosh. They've been reading, they've been listening to my speeches, they've been reading my stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, they're doing what I'm talking about.
They stole your material.
Yeah, and that's the deal. They're ideas. Anybody can do them. And lots of states are doing it. And some of the states that are doing it are already ahead of us at certain things. And we need to, look, here's what I tell people. It's not the people of Arkansas's fault. It's the politicians that over the decades have built up state government and not reformed it over time and not innovated appropriately. And somebody can say, well, you're a politician. What's the difference? Here's the difference. They made the mess, and I'm trying to fix it. That's the difference.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Can you?
And it's